Hey guys, what is up? It's Ivan from One to Pass here, and today I'm going to be doing my first GBTO2 deck profile. So it's going to be a Narukami Crimson Vanquisher deck. So, yeah, it's a pretty good deck actually. It's better than it's like the best of both worlds, honestly. Like, you get the Break Stride, and you also have the Legion as well. And you also get to play DKV, so who doesn't love Draconic Kaiser Vermillion? Anyways, let's get started off with the starter. So for starter, I play Brawler Fighting Draco Kid. So Fighting Draco Kid's skill is you counterblast him. No, you put him into Soul, and then your Vanguard gains skill. So you CB1, and during your turn, when your opponent's rearguard in the front row is placed in a drop, if your Vanguard's in Legion, you can CB1, put one of your opponent's rearguards in the same column as the rearguard that rearguard was on, and retire it. Oh, so it says rearguard circle that rearguard was on. It's a bit redundant, but basically if you pop something in the front row, when you're in Legion, you can also pop something in the back row. So this is mainly used as your main combo with Draconic Kaiser Crimson. So basically what you can do is you're going to attack the front row, and then if the front row goes, then you CB1, CB1, pop both of the back rows. So it's basically a near full board clear, which is, it's a really strong combo. The other options for starters is you can run the Grave Researcher, but honestly, I think this is much more powerful, and it's worth running because of that. So yeah, you sacrifice a bit consistency, but honestly, it doesn't really matter too much. At least for me, I don't care too much. But yeah, speaking of Crimson, so I run free of the Draconic Kaiser Crimson. So Crimson's skill is, well, first of all, he legions with Draconic Kaiser Vermillion, whose skill I will explain later. It's kind of important to this card. But his skill is that you can limit break 4, you can choose one of your Legion mates, and then that act loses its cost until the end of the turn. So you're going to do this with a Draconic Kaiser Vermillion. So, also he has a skill that you Soul Blast 1 to gain +2, so you can actually pump for pretty high numbers, since the Legion already hits for 22. So yeah, you can basically put it up to 26, which is pretty good. But you don't usually use the Soul Blast unless you really need to hit for numbers, so. But yeah, speaking of Vermillion skill, if you aren't familiar with it, then you probably haven't been playing Vanguard very long, but Vermillion's limit break 4 is to counterblast 3, and then until the end of this turn, this unit gets +2,000, and then it battles every unit in your opponent's front row. So basically, it's a front row sweep like every turn if you play this with Crimson. You also have options, like if your opponent is like stuck on grade 2 or something, and they try to rush you, and for whatever reason you're at 4 damage, then you can just ride Draconic Kaiser Vermillion, not give a crap about Legion or Stride, and just blow up their front row. Like, Vermillion is Vermillion. Yeah, I play 2 Vermillions because I'm playing a Vanquisher Crimson build, so because basically my reasoning is it gives me more options to work around. So, but yeah, overall it's one of the stronger Legion combos. Like, blowing up your opponent's front row every single turn for free is kind of crazy. So, but yeah, it's pretty decent. So yeah, 3 Crimsons, 2 Vermillions. Yeah, sorry about the camera glare. It's probably because it's pretty light out right now, but hopefully you can still see everything. And then last up for grade 3s, I run 3 copies of Draconic Vanquisher. So Vanquisher's ability is, his Break Stride is the counterblast 1. When your G unit strides, you can choose one of your opponent's rear guards, and retire it, and then bind it face up. So basically it's like you banish them to the Shadow Realm. Yeah, so it's pretty decent. Like, you just if your opponent doesn't want to commit their front row, then you just keep on blowing up whatever they have in their front row, because they kind of, basically the way you're going to play this deck is that you're going to try to play a bit aggressive. So you have to force your opponent to respawn, and then you keep blowing up their units so that you keep gaining field advantage, and then you just stall out of control like that. And actually the 2 strides that Narukami gets this set actually let you do that very efficiently, which I will explain later. But second ability, it's pretty irrelevant, because by that time you're probably going to go into Crimson. It's Generation Break 2, when your opponent's rearguard is put into drop zone due to an effect of your card, so you can't just like attack a rearguard. Gets +3,000 +1 critical, so it's basically a gauntlet buster. But it's honestly like I've never used it before ever, so because usually you're gonna be striding. But yeah, overall he gives you a lot of options, and it also trolls a lot of decks too because it binds the cards, so they can't really get it back. But yeah, it's a pretty good card. Yeah, it gives me a lot more options. Like if my opponent doesn't want to commit to board, then I can just play Vanquisher. It also guarantees when I use Conquest that like I get to get the plus 10,000. Conquest I will explain a bit later. Next up, I run 4 copies of Voltage Horn Dragon. So Voltage Horn Dragon, your opponent, when he's boosted, you CB1, your opponent has to choose one of his rear guards, retire it, and then bind it face up. So it's not restricted to front row. So what you're going to do is you're going to, with Vanquisher, you're going to keep popping his front row. And then if they don't have anything more in the front row, then they'll probably have to start getting rid of back row. So basically, like, you're forcing them to clear their entire board, which is really good. Yeah, it gives you a lot of control, honestly. So it's not like hard control because you don't get to choose what you retire, what's retired, but you can still like force them to like remove parts of your field, and then you just gain a lot of advantage that way. So Voltage Horn is overall a pretty good card. It's pretty cheap and does its job very well. Next up, I honestly think this guy's amazing. The Demonic Dragon Berserker Chatura. So first thing that's really weird is that it can't attack a rear guard, but you'll see why. Because this guy's basically, he's permanently plus 3,000, and when he, on rear guard of course, and when his attack hits, you can counterblast 1, you can draw 1 card, and then choose one of your opponent's units in their drop zone and bind it face up. So it's basically a permanent 11,000 attacker. Only restriction is you can't attack rear guard, but who's going to attack rear guard? No, you're going to use the other things to attack rear guard if you really need to, but yes, he's a very good card. The 11,000 honestly just makes this card crazy because like it works starting. It doesn't have any restrictions whatsoever. Like every single Narukami deck should be playing this card because like it gives you advantage on hit, and you can also bind opponent's cards. So this is kind of why I think the cross is like gonna be 100% dead now because Narukami just exists, and they can just bind all their Persona copies if these guys hit. And yeah, it's just really stupid. But yeah, next time I run free 12k attackers. 12k attackers, the reason why is I just want to be able to make lines with this deck and not have to 100% have a back row to actually pull it off. Plus, it also gives you the options to hit cross-ride bases, so it's not bad anyways. But 11k plus, like being able to hit that number by itself is really important because of Conquest Dragon, obviously. So you could also run Dragonic Death Scythe, but I don't have any, and I don't really like him anyways, so no, I don't think this one was me being cheap. I honestly just don't want it. I think maybe the part where I don't have 4 Vermillions is why I put Vanquisher in, but honestly, no, it works. I feel like it works a lot better than just the pure Legion build because you can do a lot more with Vanquisher. Vanquisher is like really good. So that's about it for grade 2s. Oh man, Gallon Garrus is terrible. Yeah, please bear with me. So next up, I run 4 copies of Dragon Dancer Anastasia. So Anastasia, love her art. Basically, she's a flipping perfect art. So restriction is you can't guard rear guards, but you honestly don't really care because, I mean, D-Police, whatever. You're gonna blow up the Laurel anyways. So the cross, I already told you, this deck like counters the cross. So the 2 decks where you actually have to worry about your guarding your rear guards doesn't really matter. So you're pretty much good. You can just run these unflipping perfect guards because, you know, being able to use like all your abilities without like worrying about CB is really nice. And then I run 4 copies of Mighty Bolt Dragoon. I was thinking of like Spark Edge Draco Kid for some reason. But basically, same as all the stride enablers. Call him on rear guard, reveal grade free, search for Vanquisher added to hand, ditch a card. And then he also gets +2 when you pay for cost of stride. Striding is very important in this deck. It's actually probably one of the more key engines. Like, less so Crimson, it's much more striding. You need to stride like as soon as you hit grade free. I will explain why later. But the strides are like very integral to why this deck works and why it's so good. Next I run 3 copies of Tompa Brawler Arc. Arc is when your Vanguard's in Legion and when your opponent's rear guards is put into drop, he gets +3. So this is basically helps you also finish games off. Because what you're going to do is you're going to use Crimson and Brawling Draco Kid to just blow up like 4 units. So these guys get plus like 12. So that hits pretty high lines. If you have a 12k attacker, This gets plus 12, 19, 12, 31. So yeah, they're gonna have fun guarding 31 because they've already been guarding a lot of crap this entire game. So yeah, he's a really good booster. It's just mainly there for sound K body. And finally, for grade 1s, I run 3 copies of... I moved the thing a bit. 3 copies of Rising Phoenix. So Rising Phoenix is your Soul Blast 2 draw 1. So basically a Lemonade clone again. No, it's not Lemonade, Luckbird clone. But it's really good because basically the idea using this guy, you have 12Ks and 11Ks. So you can already hit numbers like that. As well, it's a very cheap booster for Voltage Horn. So it's always a good thing. Drawing cards in Narukami is actually a bit important. It's not as important because you're playing a lot more aggro than Kagero would, but you still need stuff to protect yourself. So it's a pretty good card overall because you don't use your soul for anything except for Crimson, but you almost never use that act ability to get +2, so it's fine. And then finally I have the triggers, so 4 copies of the heal trigger. You can run whatever heal you want, but this one's a noble, and there's an interaction with the FC 2015 stride, but you never use that anyways, so. Interesting choice is I play 3 stand triggers. Why do I play stand triggers? Basically, there's 2 reasons. One is of Chachura, if I can find them, because Chachura always hits for 11, so anytime you have units that can attack for 12 and 11 consistently, you always want... Stand triggers are always an option. But the second reason why is Conquest Dragon gives plus 10,000 to front row if like their front row is empty. So the stand trigger is pretty broken with that. As well, the stand trigger is also a good stand trigger. When your opponent's rear guard is put into drop zone, you can pay cost. So put this card at the top of your deck. You shuffle your deck, choose 1 card in your damage zone and flip it, and then you can still draw a card afterwards. So yeah, I mean, it pays for itself. It unflips damage. It's pretty good. But the stand triggers mainly is there to abuse the fact that you get power pluses on your front row. Same ideology as to why I play in Ramiel Reverse, but yeah. But this is not Ramiel Reverse. This deck is honestly so cheap. Not cheap in price, but I mean like, you know what I mean. And then I run 3 copies of Draw Trigger. Draw Triggers, you need them, because, I mean, you need Draw Triggers. Not like, you need to get cards in hand to like help build your field up, and also to gain a bit of protective edge, because you're going to be going pretty aggro on your opponent, but you still need to protect yourself, so the draw triggers are always nice. So in that case, I run actually a lot less crits. I only run 6 crits in this deck, because you're already going to be hitting really high numbers, so it kind of balances itself out. And I always liked stand triggers because they're more useful when your opponent's at higher damage, so which they should be at higher damage if you play this deck correctly. But yeah, that's about it for the main deck. Stride deck. I'm running obviously my 1 copy of Blizza. Blizza is Blizza. I mean, if the game goes on to this point where you actually need to use him, well, shame on you. You should have finished the game earlier. But I don't think I've actually went over what Blizza does in any of my videos. But basically, what Blizza does is you counterblast 1, choose 1 face down card in your G zone, flip it face up. Then he gets plus 5,000 for each face up card in your G zone. So you're gonna get through your G zone pretty quickly. So if this is going to be like you're around your 4th or 5th stride. So if you get to this point, then it's going to get plus 20 to plus 25,000. So it's pretty disgusting amount of power that you're going to get on him. So if your opponent doesn't have perfect guard, they're basically screwed. But yeah, Blizza is amazing. Basically, it sort of replaces Atmos. Not really. Atmos is still useful in a very few amount of decks where you don't barely stride at all. In decks where you barely stride at all, then Atmos is good. But Blizza, yeah. Next time I run 3 copies of Lightning Dragon Knight Saurus. Saurus is like insanely good. Like, because your opponent does not want to let him hit, but often they actually have to, and when he goes off, he's really good. But yeah, what Saurus does is when his attack hits, your opponent has to choose 1 of their rear guards, retire him, and then you get to choose 2 cards in your opponent's drop zone and bind him face up. So, screws all over Legion decks pretty hard. It's a soft form of control. It's overall a really good first stride, and sometimes a second stride depending on what the board setup is. But the real MVP of this deck is honestly Conquest Dragon, which I am running 4 copies of because he's just amazing. A very amazing card. I personally think he's actually better than Ambrose, but that's just me. It's just because how I play this deck. It just works really well. But yeah, he's a persona unflipper, so once per turn, you choose one copy of a card called Conquering Supreme Dragon, Conquest Dragon. Yeah, it's a real mouthful. In your G zone, flip it face up, and then if the number of cards in your G zone is 2 or more, then you can choose one of your opponent's rearguard in the front row, retire it, and then all your units in the front row get plus 5,000 for each of your opponent's open rearguards in the front row until end of turn. That's crazy. Like, they have. Okay, if you if you have Vanquisher, you stride this guy, you pop one of their front row units with 1 CP, and then you pop the other with Conquest. You're already gonna get plus 10,000 on the front row. That's insane. Cause like your opponent should be at like 3 or 4 by now. So this guy is crazy because he goes to 21 like without a boost, and then you have a bunch of other things that can hit for 11 or above, and then he has his stand trigger like. Basically gonna end them. It's basically as bad as hitting a crit because they actually, yeah. So the stands really give you options because with a smaller board you can actually be a bit more aggressive. But yeah, Conquest Dragon, like, he controls the board. He gives you power. Like, it's a really good card. Yeah, basically Conquest Dragon usually ends games like really quickly. If the first one doesn't kill them, the second one almost always does. Otherwise, sometimes Crimson also works to finish games off with the plus with Tampa Brawler, but Arc, yeah, Arc is his name. I'm not very familiar with all the Narukami units names because like reason why I actually built Narukami is because I just had extras from my case, so I just decided to build it and then I'll just sell it later probably because Narukami is not really my thing. It's a pretty cool deck overall. I definitely think it's stronger than Aquaforce right now. Like, I barely lose to Aquaforce with this deck. But yeah, I'm gonna see how it goes in tournaments. It's probably gonna be pretty devastating, but the build could be adjusted a little bit. It's pretty flexible depending on what you look for in your decks, but overall I think it's a pretty strong deck. Definitely recommend it if you have the time or money to build it. You can always play around with the deck builds, of course. These are just the builds that I make that I think work best with my playstyle. But I know other people have different playstyles from me. So, of course, you obviously want to make a deck that's more tailored to your style of play. But yeah, that's about it for this deck profile. I always appreciate all the views and support. Just comment below if you have any questions, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.